Hi everyone, I'm Paige Abbott, and today we're going to talk about relationships. Actually, wait a minute, that doesn't feel right. I think instead we're going to talk about that it's okay to change your mind. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Today I wanted to tackle this topic of that it's okay to change your mind. The fact of the matter is that some people have a hard time believing and accepting that it is okay to change their minds from decisions that are on a smaller scale, like everything from what you're going to wear to what you're going to eat for dinner to what restaurant you're going to go to, all the way up to bigger things in life related to work or family or living situation and beyond. So how come you think this is? How come some people have a difficult time changing their minds with a decision? I think there's a number of different factors here, and some of these may apply to everybody, some of these may not apply to you, and you may find that you relate to maybe one or a couple more than the others, and that's totally okay. Nobody is going to fit the mold all of the time. I think there's a few different factors. One that I've seen is people pleasing. So people who want others to be happy are often making their initial decisions based on what they think is going to make those around them happy. This can create some rigidity and some cementing of their decision. People who are struggling with people pleasing actually have a hard time considering that they also may have their own needs, their own preferences, and the decision that they're making may not be in alignment with those as they're striving to people please and take care of another person's feelings. So that desire or that need, it's not even a desire at that level, it's a need to make sure that other people are happy, can prevent the individual from having some flexibility to look at what are my options and is that something that I want to do. A second factor that can create some difficulty being okay with changing one's mind about decisions is some of us are more prone to cognitive rigidity or inflexibility than others. Some people are hardwired with a brain that can be very focused, very rigid, and get very attached and very strongly attached to things, ideas, which includes decisions. If you are somebody who has struggled with problematic behaviors or substances in the past, then this category may more than likely apply to you. The attachment that you had in the past to those behaviors or to those substances shows that your brain is vulnerable to getting very easily and overly attached to things, which can also include decisions. This can obviously make it a bit challenging to be cognitively flexible, but that is something that through therapy and through your own self-management and growth that you can work on practicing. So it would mean challenging yourself to make different decisions than what your brain is saying you should do, and probably starting to do that on small scale decisions to begin with so that you can build up some comfort and some tolerance to those uncomfortable feelings that may come. I think another factor that comes up in creating some dissonance with people who don't feel that they can change their minds with things is shame and self-esteem. If people feel that their feelings and their thoughts and their beliefs aren't valid, aren't worthy, aren't enough, then guess what? They are going to feel like advocating for decisions, especially to come back to someone and say, hey, I've changed my mind on this. Can we go in a different direction? Becomes difficult, if not even impossible. Another factor I would throw in there is some people just literally their brains prevent them from considering that there's other options. So to deal with this factor, having other people who can support you and problem solve with you can be helpful, because literally having someone to say, have you considered option B or option C? literally may not have even occurred to you. And so having somebody to present those other options is a great reality check. So you can step back and go, oh, I'd never even considered that that was an option. And therefore, that can allow you to step back from whatever decision you thought you had made to consider your other options. The long and the short of it is okay at any point with anything to change your mind. The reality is that people change. Feelings change, thoughts change, beliefs and values shift. Everything changes over time. And even if that's in a short window of time, maybe 10 minutes ago, you said that you were going to do one thing, and then you reevaluate and say, actually, I've changed my mind with that, then it's okay to do that. Now, some of you may also be thinking, so what about people who are chronically changing their mind in such a way that it feels and is perceived by others as quote unquote flaky, people who struggle to make a decision and stick with it? I would say this is the opposite end of the spectrum from what I'm talking about here today. I'm addressing more so the people who struggle to be cognitively flexible and to give themselves permission to change their minds or do something different from what they had originally planned. But I do recognize that there's people on the other side of the spectrum of extreme who are so flexible that it's really hard for them to have an anchor and to commit to something. And so that back and forth decision making, in some ways, it's not even that they're changing their mind, they're perhaps struggling with some of the same symptoms that I've already mentioned, particularly the shame and self-esteem issue, and also the opposite of the cognitive rigidity issue, that their brains are almost too flexible, that they have a hard time committing. For somebody on that side of the spectrum, it might be important to do the opposite of what I suggested before, of building up tolerance by changing your mind and exploring options with decisions, and actually saying, okay, I am going to pick an action that I'm going to take. This is what I'm going to wear first thing I pick out of the closet, or this is what I'm going to eat first thing I pick out of the fridge or the freezer, and stick with that to also build up some comfort and some tolerance in sticking with those decisions and seeing how that feels. I recognize that people are people, they're all very different, but we all have our unique vulnerabilities and challenges. This is an opportunity to explore and evaluate, where are you at in terms of decision making? I know for me personally, and that's what inspired this video, I definitely fall on the first side of the spectrum over here, where I have difficulty acknowledging that it is okay to come back to someone and say, I've changed my mind. My brain can be quite rigid that way, that once I've committed to something, that's what I'm supposed to do. And this has added a lot of strength in my life. It's made me perceived as very diligent, very responsible, but it also has its downside, particularly for me, because I'll often stay in things longer than I would like to, or longer than is healthy for me, because I'm struggling to acknowledge that it's okay to have a change of mind or a change of preference. So that's my own personal work, is working on identification of feelings and needs to look at what's working and what's not working for me in my current world, and then also working on assertiveness and advocacy. So for any of you who fall on that side of the spectrum, I really would encourage you to engage in some similar work. You can do that through your own self-reflection and tools and peer support, but you might also want to pull in a professional who can support you in figuring out what are the beginning and next steps in that journey. But this is also true for people on the other side of the spectrum, that you may also benefit from some additional help and support to work on accountability, to work on stability, and building those anchors in your life, because there's a lot of value in having some predictability and some anchors for our mental and emotional health. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Always a pleasure to connect and put out some health and wellness into the world. I wish you all the best. Take care.